Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CoLab. This is SpacetoCo's free monthly online sessions designed to assist those working in community venues to learn, upskill, and be inspired to do their work more effectively and efficiently. We hope you find these sessions useful for the important work you do in our local communities. For those of you who are watching this recording after this live session, hello, and we hope you get valuable knowledge from this session. My name is Carmela, and I organize these monthly learning series. And just a little bit about SpacetoCo before we move on. So, our mission in SpacetoCo is to help community venues to be a thriving hub in their communities. We do so by providing opportunities to be able to grow bookings, increase community engagement, as well as support. We also create and provide free resources for those working in community venues. SpacetoCo is a two-sided marketplace where you can list your spaces where guests can find and book them online. It is also an efficient booking system tool where you can reduce your admin by 80%. We work with a number of local governments as well as community centers across New Zealand and Australia. This session is how to bring people together and create a sense of community in your community venue. This session will explore the importance of actively listening to your community and not just hearing their words, but truly understanding their needs, hopes, dreams, and ideas. We'll be unpacking how to move beyond assumptions and into co-design, where communities become partners in shaping the spaces and programs that serve the broader community. Through real examples, experiences, and practical tips, you'll learn how to open up meaningful conversations, invite participation, and create initiatives that people are actually excited to be a part of and contribute to. And more importantly, you'll create a sense of belonging that is one of the critical indicators of community well-being. So our speaker today, which I am so excited to introduce you guys to, is Maggie L'Estrange. She is honestly not a stranger in the SpacetoCo team. She brings over 35 years of experience in local government and community development with a strong track record in governance, project management, and stakeholder engagement across all levels of government. She's known for building resilient and communities and securing funding for impactful initiatives. She holds multiple diplomas and certificates in business, community services, justice studies, and cultural fitness. An honorary member of community centers in South Australia, Maggie now applies her strategic and communication expertise as a quality assurance associate at SpacetoCo, woo, and continuing her commitment to meaningful community impact. So we now welcome to the stage Maggie. Wait, let me unmute her. Hold on. There we go. How are you doing, Maggie? Can you?
Good, thanks, Carmela. How are you?
Good. We're so excited for your session. I've just shared your screen as well. So when you're ready, the
Thank
floor is
you.
yours.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Thanks for giving up your time. I hope this is going to be a meaningful use of the next hour for you. I'm just going to I want to say Nina Mani and greetings to you from the land of the Kaurna people here in Adelaide, South Australia. The beautiful lands here. I just want to acknowledge, recognise and pay respect to the Kaurna people, the lands on which we meet today. I pay respect to Indigenous elders, past, present and emerging. Just to give you a brief overview, we are going to be talking about information gathering, responding to ideas, um, strategies for success, and reflective practice, just in a nutshell. Um, in terms of information gathering, you, as people who work in this area, you would know all of this stuff, but it's always good to reiterate. We've got our formal stuff like our data, ABS data, early childhood development index, um, all that information we gather if we're doing grant applications, we need to paint a picture. This is one of the forms of formal data. There's also formal community engagement. Sometimes in local government, we do particular community engagement strategies on, what our community needs, what they're looking for, how to respond to those needs. So there's that kind of the formal community engagement processes that are gathered, analysed, and use that information to come up with a response. Um, there's also informal community engagement just through conversations with community members, people attending uh, the venue, our volunteers, those people on the ground who are working with us, and they get a perspective of what's happening with people, what would be a good way to respond, how we could respond better. Also, a technique called appreciative inquiry, which is a strengths-based approach so working with people, not kind of for. It's like equal stakeholders rather than like a worker-client relationship, valuing what they bring in terms of skills, abilities, and ideas. So instead of having a deficit model approach, like what's wrong in your life, how can we help you? It's what are the things you love to do? How can you contribute? What is it you love to share or teach others? What makes you feel good? All those kinds of things are, really, really helpful when it comes to gathering information and painting a picture. Um, Next one. Um, Also, as community venue managers, community development practitioners, recreation coordinators, bookings officers, any roles managing community venues, they're so wide and varied. Your role is integral to bringing people together, connecting them, and building that sense of community. Um, Also, it's important to be cognizant of your local community profile. Again, this links back to your ABS data and your early childhood development index. So, is your community primarily full of, you know, young people, children and families, older people, retirees? Is it a diverse community? Do you have a lot of new arrivals? All sorts of things. So whatever the profile of your community is, gathering that information and being cognizant of what you need to paint a picture of that. Particularly if you're going for government grants. Grants really need to be linked to exactly what the funding program's about, and data is a really important way of doing it. But also, so are the other aspects of it, the storytelling, the what you're hearing on the ground. They're really important aspects as well. Um, okay, let's move on to responding to ideas. So responding to ideas by co-designing programs with community where the participants are stakeholders, not just participants. So incorporating their ideas um, into the process itself. So finding out what would work for them, actively listening to community as part of the co-design process, so that you've got a true partnership um, developing as the project is unfolding. So listening with your hearts and minds, not just your ears, but what are you sensing at a deeper level? What are you hearing? What are those meaningful conversations? Um, Really creating something that reflects community need and people are excited to be part of. One project that was done at the City of Tea Tree Gully quite a few years ago now was working with the Indigenous community in the local area, and they were um, talking amongst themselves and finding that the only time the elders got together was actually to for funerals, seeing each other at funerals, and they didn't get to catch up in between. They didn't get to, um, just talk amongst themselves. Every time they saw each other was at a funeral, and this ongoing grief process was really taking its toll. So, with the project officer from council, they worked together and developed a program called Gully Wins, which was to bring all those elders together on a regular basis. So they had a weekly program that was, from about say 10 till 3, and it included lunch. They had social activities. They went out sometimes. They created art classes. And some of those artists went on to exhibit in exhibitions that were happening in the local community, which was fantastic. The other thing that came out of that was a choir, um, the Gully Winds Choir, which was absolutely fantastic, and that enabled, the participants in that group to really come together and not just be at funerals, but to um, be having that social aspect, to be supporting one another and, feeling much happier and better in their lives. It included things like transport and all the barriers that get in the way of actually bringing people together. And that was a really, really successful program for a number of years that, went well. Another one that was done by a church across the road, actually from where council is, was one called African Women's Day. It's now called International Community Group, but it was started by the local church about 25 years ago in response to the influx of new arrivals um, from the African continent, from various countries, and that group just went from strength to strength. They were teaching participants things like sewing, cooking, driving lessons, all the things that made it easier to settle into Australia, having relocated from their homelands. So that was a really successful way of bringing people together because the church could see the need. They responded, they brought everybody together, and working together with lots of volunteers were able to have a really inclusive program that's now not just a women's group, but for all people, parents, dads as well. And it's not just African people, it's actually, that's why it's called International Community Group, because they've got so many different cultures participating, but it's being helpful to all of those people. And the sense of community that they've got there is absolutely fantastic. They really are helpful in supporting one another. Um, so I've talked a bit about, yeah, culturally inclusive programs. That's important. Another one that started many years ago was the Windvale Community Garden. This was in response to local developments here in the city of Tea Tree Gully, where the buildings were becoming smaller and people had less of a backyard, and they didn't have gardens to kind of grow veggies and stuff like that. So there was a number of people who were organised, who were interested in the idea of a community garden, and so a bus tour was organised to visit all the community gardens across Adelaide. We had a volunteer landscape designer who designed the layout of the garden. City of Tea Tree Gully was happy to donate the land, um, and which was a reserve behind the Windvale Community House, and that it was used to start the Windvale Community Garden. Now that project that was 33 years ago. The garden has now doubled in size. It has a fantastic group of volunteers involved in running it, and they have regular open days and they sell beautiful, healthy, cheap plants. So it's an absolutely brilliant project. So, what do community venues look like? Here's one of them at Holden Hill Community Centre in the city of Tea Tree Gully. Um, this is a very vibrant, busy centre with like so many community programs running the whole time. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a picture of some Ghana uh, Ghana artifacts. One of those is the Ghana Shield, which is the symbol of the Ghana nation. And inside the community centre, I haven't got a picture of it here, but in the foyer, there's a shield that's painted up on the wall there, reflecting that this is the land of the Ghana people. Um, and there's a whole Aboriginal mural on the foyer inside the centre. Again, I haven't got a photo, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So when the Gully Winds group was running at this venue, um, they kind of walked in feeling like, yep, this was this was a comfortable place to be. They really felt like they were at home. This is another one, Bagster Road Community Centre. All venues are different, but just that vibrancy of different venues and the way that we bring people together, um, and have that, that great mix of um, cultures and ideas. Um, so, included in all of these are places like community centres, sporting clubs, halls, you know, other clubs. There's just so many. So, strategies for success. I think one of the most important things is leveraging partnerships. Um, in in the community, a lot of what we make happen is because we work together with others. We bring people together. We hone our ideas, and when we leverage partnerships, we can just deliver so much more. Um, it's a bit like less work, more outcomes, but leveraging partnerships is really important. At the City of Tea Tree Gully, when I worked there years ago, we also had an arrangement with Uni SA, and we had an ongoing um, student placement project, and that was fantastic. We had lots and lots of students who would come and do their placement with us. The staff would come up with ideas for a project. The project would be given to the uni coordinator, and then she would distribute those to the students to see who was interested in doing what. So the students selecting a project that they were interested in. But we had so many disciplines. We had physiotherapy students, social work, nutrition, communication, media, and marketing students. And this was great. I remember a project they did with the men's shed uh, at Holden Hill Community Centre, where the men's shed is based, and they did one on nutrition and exercise. So, a physiotherapy student, nutrition student, and they did a whole lot of work on increasing exercise. Um, Eating better, like incorporating all of that into the men's shed every Tuesday. And then they measured, how many kilos were lost over the term of the project and, measuring how people felt, all that sort of thing, how much more, how they increase their mobility and flexibility. Um, but all those indicators of, improving health and well-being, besides the sense of community they had from the men's shed, they were getting all these other benefits as well. So that was absolutely brilliant, and the staff did a fantastic job with, managing the men's shed, delivering that one. It was absolutely brilliant. So student placements are a great one. Sharing spaces. Often we have multiple um, programs, going on in various centres. It depends on the size of your centre, um, but also where where you are, because if you live in the country or the city, sometimes you have very little options around facilities, and sometimes the heart of your community could be the church hall, or if you're in the country, it might be your sporting club. Every facility has the opportunity to be the heart of its community, and that's what makes it so unique. So I think that's really important. Sharing spaces. Because we can make so much more happen when spaces are being shared by lots of different groups and people. Um, yeah, to get that uh, cross section of use, which is brilliant. But also it gives you security. The more a building's being used, the safer it is from vandalism and neglect and what have you. So having that constant use is fantastic. Fostering a sense of delight and discovery. I always think that's fantastic in terms of, bringing people together. We want people to be delighted. We want people to feel great when they come to our centres and look forward to it. Part of that is having meaningful conversations. That's that's just standard. Um, and having that community-led approach makes a really big difference. It's just, yeah, a critical factor as well. also sourcing supportive community allies. As I said before, when we work together with others, we can do amazing things. And so rather than thinking, oh, I've got to do this all by myself, how can I make it happen? Um, Sourcing supportive community allies is really, really important. Again, that comes back to partnerships as well, but it's great if you think of those that you can work with, who are on your side, who see the vision that you've got for developing an outcome. That's great. And then that comes back to measuring outcomes. One of the most important things for, when you're doing a project is measuring the outcomes of that. So that's absolutely a critical factor. Um, Reflective practice. Um, that thing of past program analysis. What did we learn from previous programs? What was, you know, um, what did we learn and how can we learn from that and apply it to future programs? So participant feedback and surveys, that's really important. That's pretty critical, um, especially where you get, you know, qualitative data, and you get genuine, useful feedback, and also learning from what we didn't do so well. Um, that's not a bad thing if things didn't go brilliantly. That's okay. It'll be fine. So let's learn from what we didn't do so well and what could we do to make it better next time? How could we make it better? Why? All that sort of thing. Um, and then, continuous learning, feedback, reflection, review, adjust, renew, rinse and repeat. So same sort of process, keep going, keep honing it. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know you know what you're doing. You are fantastic practitioners in your own right. You're doing brilliant work out there. Thank you for all that you do, because the work that you do is making an incredible difference in our communities, and we love what you do. So please keep up the great work. Yeah, we love it. So I just want to finish off and say thank you for all that you do. Um, that's absolutely brilliant. And a few little philosophical bits of, info to inspire you, I guess, and say thank you, because I think, what you do makes such a difference. And here at SpacetoCo, we love what you do and the way that you build your communities, and we love working with you. So thank you so much for coming along today. And yeah, happy to have questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Maggie. That was such an awesome session. Even Shana in the team's been like messaging me in the background, being like, "Maggie's so cool. This is such a great session." Some of the things, like key things that I really got from your session was one you said about so much more can happen when spaces are shared to others. Every venue has a chance to be a hub in their community. And when we work with others, we can do amazing things. And so, hold on, let me just set up our next. Um, yeah, but thank you so much for your rich experience and just sharing all the stories and the encounters you've had with your local communities there in South Australia. And I think it was just awesome that you had such a like array of examples to share with us. Now, guys, we're heading into time for questions and answers. So if you guys had questions for Maggie, feel free, as I said before, to pop it into the audience chat. Or there's another tab underneath the chat called with the question mark, and that's Q&A. You're more than welcome to pop it in there too. We've just had a few already that was shared. So hold on. Just actually, I'll take this so that you're full to view. Okay, one of the questions that got brought up was, did you ever encounter difficulty in engaging people? And if so, what did you do?
Yes, from time to time. Yeah, and I guess it made us think, is this what people want? If it's difficult to engage them, how do we do that? In local government, sometimes we could, source help from our marketing team, to sort of promote it on, um, the various platforms. But that was kind of quite some time ago. We had difficulty engaging. That doesn't seem to be the case now. Now we find with a lot of our programs, because the reputation has grown, that they're actually booked out well in advance. And we get complaints from people that they can't book in. So um, that's um, that's that's just an interesting dynamic that's occurred. But yeah, when you're having trouble engaging people, talking to them about, you know, what what they would find, easier to engage in or more interesting to engage in. It's a hard one sometimes, because I know in the past I've developed programs and had absolutely no takers, even working with communities. So not everything is going to be successful, and that's okay. Um, I think you just keep chipping away, and finding some sort of even keel. Yeah, yeah. There's no, I mean, I'd love to hear if anyone else has got a great answer to that. That would be great to have some feedback, from people in the chat. But yeah, based on my experience, sometimes it was hard to engage people, particularly in disadvantaged communities. When I've worked in disadvantaged communities, it's a bit like Maslow's hierarchy. People are so busy surviving, they don't have the luxury of being able to think about participating in a group, because they're just worried about putting, um, food on the table, and getting, having a settled home life. So that sort of thing can make a difference. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. I think what you said about like it's okay to do something or run something and it doesn't go to plan or it wasn't as
Mm,
successful as you think it was. What matters is you take note of it and you try and do better for next time.
mm,
And I think you
yeah.
mentioned in your session as well, like the aspect of active listening is you're not
Mm,
assuming. You mentioned before, like you're not assuming what the community needs. You're actually like talking to them and you're co-designing with them for what they
mm.
actually need. And speaking of that, Pauline had a question. What are some ways to encourage people to be involved in co-design of programs?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be really welcoming and open. So from the time you start that, making sure people feel included, talking about what co-design is and the expectations and how they can contribute, because essentially they're going to be, partly leading that process. And sometimes people are very enthusiastic about getting involved, and that's fantastic. But sometimes you might need to encourage people to say, "Hey, come on board. This is going to be great fun. We want your brain cells. We want your ideas. Make it fun. Um, not kind of a chore, but something that's going to help meet their needs, and also that they're contributing to, so they can feel good about what they're doing in their community. That's really, really important. Yeah.
Well, I was amazed. But yeah, that's so important as well. Like what you mentioned, just affirmation and affirming like things that are
Mm.
going well. And we're not just here to pump up programs for the sake of pumping out programs. It's actually like, actually, this is you guys have done well in this. Well done. You're doing amazing work. And even the fact that you thank everybody who's tuning in, who will be watching this session afterwards, like even acknowledging that um, they're already doing the good work and they already have some of the tools to be able to do the great
Mm.
work.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
we have
can see
another
here
question.
Edie Magic has said one way to promote and encourage participation is regular content on social
Mm,
media to showcase people enjoying their involvement. That's so true. That's an excellent comment. Totally agree with that. We Once we started doing that at the City of Tea Tree Gully on a regular basis, we did notice that, a lot of our programs kind of went boom. Yeah. So
mm,
very good point. Yeah.
awesome. Another question that popped up is, what is your advice on how to promote the programs so that many people in the community can access them as possible? I guess that relates to what Edie has said already as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think these days social media is a big form of promoting, and is certainly very helpful. Years ago, we used to, print stuff and letterbox and all these manual ways of doing it. But in the online world, it's a different kettle of fish. And often we used to promote stuff through schools and kindies if we were doing, you know, programs relating to parents and preschoolers. Um, we would often promote those through, like here in South Australia, we have children's centres. So the children's centres have a community development worker who's based in a kindergarten or children's centre, and they coordinate a whole lot of stuff around families and children. Absolutely brilliant concept, and really helps bringing people together. But also the staff at council work with the children's centre staff to collaborate and develop projects together, and it's absolutely brilliant. Again, leveraging partnerships, brilliant.
Yeah, awesome. Um, there's one more. I think we've got a couple more questions, which is awesome. Um, what have you found have been barriers that hinder bringing community together, and how did you problem solve those things?
I think going back to real basics here is the budget. Like sometimes if you have funding for delivering programs, you can do so much. If you have no funding or you have a tiny budget, I remember years ago the whole operating budget for the centre I worked in, for everything, and we're going back about 30 years now, was about $2,000. Um, and it's very hard to deliver a lot of stuff on a something like that. But in more recent years, as we've funding was applied for from state government, um, and applied to four community centres, you might have 500,000, and you can just do so much more when you've got
Mm,
money. So money, being able to have resources is a huge thing. Um, but it also takes a lot of time and energy to write grant applications and
mm,
do all the work, the research that goes into that. But if you're focusing on community health and well-being, you can substantiate that for your community, particularly when it comes to families and children, because there seems to be a lot more funding around for some of those programs. Um, and and yeah, keeping if you've got access to newsletters, funding newsletters about all the grants that are around about, that's a good way to kind of keep trying to access money as well. Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Um, in an awesome, somebody wanted to know, in your experience in community building, what has been the most significant change or impact you've seen when it's done right or intentionally?
Oh, look, I think the best thing without a doubt is when you run a really, really successful project and the people in that project are saying, "We did this ourselves." That is ultimately success. Um, is when they own the project and they
Mm,
say, "This is what we achieved," and they feel really good about it, and they tell others, and that's a fantastic sign of success. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Um, Somebody mentioned in the intros and stuff how, because obviously you, prior to working at SpacetoCo, you were working in a community center that used SpacetoCo. How
Mhm.
has using SpacetoCo and the features that we have helped you, or in some ways with with community building?
Yeah, when I, Yeah, I worked as a community development officer for many years, and then when I changed roles and became a like I did all the admin for the community centres, and I looked after all the hires for the last 7 or 8 years of working. Um, the difference it made going from a manual system for hire and bookings, and then going to SpacetoCo, where everything was just, like a dreamscape of efficiency. Um, it was unbelievable. The changes it made, and it enabled me to develop better relationships with all my hirers and
Mm.
customers, because I was no longer bogged down in paperwork and phone calls and emails and this, that, and the other. The system itself was taking care of just the practical stuff to do with hire and billing and all of that. And it enabled me to have really good relationships with the hirers, which was brilliant. It made such a difference. And particularly, I think, uh, when we had COVID, um, that because originally when COVID hit, we were on a manual system, and we
Mm.
had to do like hundreds of credit notes and all this sort of stuff for hires that had to be shut down um, because of the pandemic. And it was just so laborious. I think I spent the first 3 or 4 months at home, working from home, doing credit notes, because there were so many and they all had to be manually calculated and then
Mm.
worked out. And then, it was just such a palaver. When we onboarded to SpacetoCo in late 2020, and that following year we had some more um, mini COVID shutdowns, it was such a breeze to just cancel bookings. It was just the press of a button. Didn't have to calculate anything. Didn't have to do credit notes. It was just brilliant. So that, from an admin perspective, was just a game changer. The efficiencies it created was, beyond belief. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
That's awesome. It's awesome that you said, like, it made your relationships with your hirers better and really
it did.
made a difference.
Yeah,
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 that's
because I
awesome.
had time to engage with them rather than just be hassling them around, payment of invoices and stuff like that. It was, yeah, so much easier, and I loved it. It was great. Just the best thing
Mm.
we did was onboarding with SpacetoCo. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we have one more question from Eddie. Said, Maggie, from your experience, how successful are cross promotions of programs so people start partaking in other programs besides their current participation?
Yeah, fantastic. Yep, that's great. I think that cross promotion is a really, really important um, aspect of marketing different programs. I've witnessed that where when we did more cross promotion, that we had people starting to participate in different stuff. People who would traditionally just do, only come to this centre for this program, they started um, booking into other programs in other centres, and and even beyond that, to recreation centres, participating in exercise program, because we were doing a lot of stuff around the like health and well-being stuff, and incorporating, physical well-being, movement. We had programs like chair Pilates and chair yoga for older people,
Mm.
so that, yep, they might not be able to, do a mini marathon, but they can still keep their flexibility and movement by doing something like chair Pilates. Um, and that was brilliant. Again, some of those programs are kind of booked out all the time. Because they're subsidised, they're affordable, and even those on a low income can join in, and people really look forward to that. Some people, they do that, then they go and have a cup of coffee together afterwards. It's a
Mm.
nice, it keeps that connection going. But cross promotion is a really, really important aspect of, yes, getting people into into doing different things as well as the things they like, but also experimenting with some new programs. I think we even had a term for some people. We called them serial bookers because they were booking into just about everything. But that was good to see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Um, so I think that that's all the questions that we had. But not to worry. If you guys, by any chance, have any other questions for Maggie, with her permission, we'll probably send out her details for you if you wanted to contact her yourself about anything with regards to the session. But we just wanted to say a massive thank you to Maggie for giving up her time, and also for sharing her knowledge and experiences with us. And honestly, it's so valuable, what you've shared and what we've learned here. So thank you again, Maggie. If you guys want to, you're more than welcome to send like Maggie some love on the chat. But I'm just gonna remove her off the stage for now, and then look at us. We're ending quite early, which is awesome. But just to wrap up, for those of you who don't know, um, I feel like working for SpacetoCo is pretty awesome because I feel like Oprah when it comes to resources. It's just like you get resource, you get resource. It's just free for everybody. But SpacetoCo has so much resources available for you guys if you want it. For those of you working in community venues, we will link you to this link afterwards when you guys get the um, recording and the resources and how to contact Maggie. Yeah, we will send that to you. And other things is if you love the collab, we have another one every month. And next Tuesday, next month, it'll be happening on Tuesday, the 27th of May. And the session will be on facilitating community and development and empty commercial spaces. So our awesome hosts and friends from Fraser's Landing will be joining us, and they will be speaking on exploring how flexible early activation on commercial spaces can support belonging, well-being, and vibrancy in new developments. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, for taking the time to support Maggie and just learn from her. We hope that you have a great day and a week ahead. And thank you, thank you, thank you so much for the awesome work you guys do in our local communities. Have a great day and goodbye.